What is up, team? Hope you're all well. We're going to be talking tonight about high blood pressure. All right, BP for short. A lot of people, there's a whole heap of myths around blood pressure and like what it actually is. I mean, the first thing that people always say what causes high blood pressure is too much salt intake. All right, and that's a whole load of crap. And I'll talk, well, to an extent, it's a whole load of crap. And the second thing after that people talk about is going to be stress. Right, and the third thing that sometimes, very, very rarely, is going to be water. Okay. So first of all, let's just get these straight. What is it that actually causes high blood pressure? Well, what we have in the body is this here is one of your arteries, okay? And then within this artery, we have a whole heap of blood, which is going in here. Now, this blood is fluid. And whenever we drink more water or we hold on to more salt, the amount of fluid in here goes up. So instead of being, really thin and flowing and nice and all that sort of stuff, it starts to expand. And it starts to get more and more and more. And when you get more fluid, it has a force which actually pushes onto the artery. And this is what the pressure is called. This is how hard the fluid is pushing onto the artery. Does that make sense? Okay, so we need to get really, really clear on that. That's what it is. Now, the reason why people think that it can be salt is because we have this thing called osmolarity in the body, which is the balance or the ratio of salt to water. And this is always maintained. It is always the same. So whenever we have a reduction in salt, we also have a reduction in water. So let's say, for example, you don't eat salt for the next week, you will lose a small amount of water weight just because your body needs to balance this out all the time. Likewise, if you increase the amount of salt that you have, you increase the amount of water. All right. More salt, more water. That's how it goes. So it always increases it. And this is said to be one of these things which has an impact on blood pressure. Now, this is true to an extent. However, the body's actually really tightly regulated because our kidneys, they actually control how much salt and how much water we contain. And so it's always constantly balancing it out. So if you go and you pee it out, if you haven't drank enough water one day, you'll see that your urine is really, really yellow, right? You ever seen this when it's looking back in the bowl? It's really, really yellow. What's happening here is you've got an increased amount of salt and a decreased amount of water. Right? The salts end up looking like it's yellow. Does that make sense? I know it's a bit of a gross example, but you get my drift. So this is constantly regulated. Two myths I want to dispel immediately are this. It's not going to be your salt intake to an extent. And it's not going to be water. Now, if you're just drinking gallons and gallons and gallons of water and kilos of salt, yeah, for sure, it's going to have an impact on here, but it's not really going to be the biggest thing unless you have some sort of kidney issue. And that's, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about a regular healthy person. The main thing that it comes down to is stress. And I'll explain to you why that makes sense and why this is the real reason. In these arteries and veins, we have in here blood, a certain amount of blood, a certain amount of fluid. Now, if we have an increase in the amount of blood, then this causes pressure this way. What do you think happens if these arteries and veins, these blood vessels, get smaller? They end up squeezing it in. What happens then? Well, we have the same amount of blood, but in a smaller space, which causes the pressure to go up. Does that make sense? And what causes arteries and veins to constrict and get smaller? What causes this? Stress. This is the biggest one that causes these things to happen. Whenever we're in a stressed state, our body goes through vasoconstriction, which makes these things much, much smaller. And this is why you end up with high blood pressure. Have you ever seen someone who's been really, really stressed before? Really, really fucking stressed. They're working a super horribly stressful job, right? Their blood pressure is just through the roof. They're walking around their faces like a freaking beetroot. This is what happens when you're too stressed, okay? So if you actually want to fix blood pressure, here's what you need to do. Number one, fix your stress. Get rid of it, okay? Meditate. Do breath work, right? These are some of the easiest things that you can do. Or stop inducing stress on yourself. Right? If you're creating a lot of stress in your life, if you're just building up more and more and more stress because you're taking on more work, you're not sleeping, you're not giving any time for yourself, you're just putting pressure on yourself, you will burst. You need to manage that stuff. The next thing after that is going to be sleep. Make sure that you're actually sleeping well and make sure that you're getting your good 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours with at least 3 hours of deep and REM combined. Okay? That's what you need to be aiming for right there. Third thing is lower your heart rate. So you lower your resting heart rate, that's going to have a huge, huge impact on it. And the final thing is start looking into using nootropics and brain enhancers to reduce stress. Okay? These are 4 really easy things that you can do straight away, all of which are covered in the High Performance Man Academy. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you got something out of it and you want to learn more, click the link below or type in High Performance Conversations with James Cant and you'll be able to check out all the podcasts that we've done. We cover a stack of different topics, everything from getting your mojo back, overcoming anxiety, self-doubt, self-esteem, and learning from some of the industries and some of the world's top performers in both business and in health. Look forward to having you on there.